Hello, this is Dr. Castleberry taking questions from our students in COM 2143 Digital Media Literacy. We're looking at questions from our weekly readings, primarily Marcel Denise's Popular Culture Introductory Perspectives 4th edition, and Henry Jenkins Sanford Joshua Green's Spreadable Media, Creating Value in a Networked Culture. Very good. And we tackled a handful of questions from Gina. Just love the direction of the thoughts from our students. And I want to look at some questions from other students now, starting with Amy. Amy writes, cyberspace, is bringing us, quote, closer, end quote, to, but also I get it. Cyberspace is bringing us closer, but also further apart from each other. How do you think we will overcome the keyboard warrior mentality since we don't have to be present to have a disagreement with others? I'm going to create a tease with this, right? And it's an opportunity for our viewers in classes to kind of tune in and see what's going on. But this is a conversation we're going to unpack this a bit in the week 5 video discussion. So that's a tease for things to come. And so I'm not going to have an elongated response to this. But isn't that the double bind we keep identifying, is that social media and smartphones, they kind of seem to bring us closer in some ways, but and maybe digitally we are closer, or have a feeling of being closer. At least we're being fed enough dopamine to believe we are closer, but we seem more distanced, perhaps relationally, and that's not always the case. I don't think we can't clinically diagnose that it's everything one way to everyone. There are plurality of uses and use values for media, and that's the tricky thing, is how are people using it as opposed to being used by media. So that's something to keep in mind. But again, check out that video discussion 5 prompt, because we're going to look at the implications of our role, what we do there, and certainly there are pros and cons to being that keyboard warrior. Good, great vernacular there. Nice words and wording in this. Next question, what are a couple of examples on how you recognize a source as the original source when you are researching topics for a paper? And so here are some follow-up questions. I think one of the takeaways, hopefully, sometimes it's not always obvious, right? But hopefully a takeaway we draw from a class, some of the types of the way that repetition keeps playing a role in a course like this is, to the question, what are examples of how we recognize a source as original, as the original source for a topic? I asked myself this first: do other authors and sources point to this source as the origin? Okay, does that make sense? Are others writing and looking about and pointing in this direction, saying this is where this came from? And I think that's a way we can kind of clarify that others are identifying this as the master source. Another follow-up question: does the author make this claim? So sometimes, especially maybe like a scholarly work, right, a journal article or maybe a book, the authors will at some point outright say the focus of this book is to present this new concept, right? It could be a theory or this idea, right? And I think that's one of the things that makes reading about theories not only a different experience from reading, not only not fiction but nonfiction, right? That more intellectually driven works are introducing us to new language sets for ideas and helping us grapple with the nuances between similar concepts and practices that have in everyday life. Here's another follow-up question I jotted down: is the keyword or thesis identifiable in a prior work? So not only has maybe the claim been used before, but are the keywords first timers? Has the thesis been used before? Does the author have a previous work that covers similar territory? All right, so let's use an example here. Henry Jenkins, one of the co-authors of Spreadable Media, I've mentioned now in this week 3 focus that he has a large, wide spanning body of work. And in one of his earlier works, about, roughly less than a decade before Spreadable Media, is convergence culture. And that one might arguably be his most widespread, right? Known and cited works, because the theoretical work he's laying down, the kinds of observations and phenomenon naming that's going on in that, it remains potent and pivotal to where and how we assess the media today, right? Still resonates, in other words. And so, does the author have a previous work? So you can kind of see how the groundwork laid in other works from one author sometimes feeds into a later work where they're kind of refining those ideas. And we can appreciate that process of refining something over time. Let's look at a couple of questions from... Let me make sure I didn't have another one starred here. I'm trying to kind of spread it around a little bit, no pun intended. Joshua has a couple of questions I would like to tackle, starting with, what are some ways that media spread? Very nice. How does the spread of media affect popular culture? Okay, so let's start here. There are various mass mediums. So a medium is a mechanism through which media travels along a channel. So you think about radio is a medium, right, in which you have channels of media on it. You can change those channels, and you're changing the content, the nature of what you're receiving. Television operates the same way. Film is a medium, is a mass medium. You think about a multiplex, and you go in, and there's different screens where, depending on the room I enter, the ticket I purchase, I'm getting access to different kinds of mass-mediated messages, right? But the internet kind of pluralizes and converges this idea, and that's why it's so dynamic, is because things are brought together, right? I can view film on the internet. It's not being projected celluloid strips, but the essence of what was a film, what constitutes a film in a different form, I can view on the internet. Same goes with television. I can view it on the internet. Radio, I can listen to it through the internet. Even though it's no longer terrestrial radio, the recordings itself, the message, the substantive narrative nature of the content, I can engage through that medium. And that's why the internet is a convergence medium. Yeah. And so not only various mass mediums, but vast mediums of distribution. So things are set out different ways, right? If I go to, let's go back to the movie theater, right? So let's say, I don't know, new animated family movie is coming out, Pixar something or other, and they want to get the word out about this. Well, eventually, we think about, if I'm taking in a film, something, maybe a family film, there's two ways I'm going to consume it. I either go to the movie theater or I wait for it to come out on quote unquote video, right? Which, formerly VHS and then DVD, and now we have like Blu-ray discs and ultra high def and video on demand. All these are out. Well, I'm demonstrating it right now. There's all these options of distribution. And so these are various modes and methods of distribution. But there's also interconnectivity between the themes. But there's also other avenues of distribution, right? So let's go back. I'm talking about a Pixar animated family film. And so other ways that it might be distributing its message to me along different channels is, I could see a traditional TV commercial for the feature. Or I could, perhaps I see a poster up in somewhere I'm going shopping, right? And then maybe I'm walking along shopping, or I go to a different location and they have a tie-in kids toy with the children-focused value meal, right? And so we're seeing different ways in which the message is both drawing us as not merely audience, but consumer. It's drawing and hailing us in as consumer, and it's hailing us, right? It's saying, "Hey, you," as structuralists, as Claude Levi-Strauss would say. But it's drawing us in through multiple mechanisms. And so businesses are increasingly about this, and the argument in spreadable media, if not simply if we get to the finish line, but if we start to kind of read it on their terms, if we get in tune with their narrative, is that really all successful ideas are going to need to at some point take advantage of these concepts of spreadability and portend a necessary stickiness if they are to not merely resonate but continue in culture, in business, in culture, in life. Next question: what is piracy and how does it affect spreadable media? And I guess my response here is that piracy is akin to plagiarism. We could start there in that kind of way. And both might deal with intellectual property in some form. Some might be officially copyrighted, other is kind of unofficially. But if it's, the difference would be, we typically view plagiarism as an ethical issue, right? It creates an ethical concern or a breach. Whereas piracy implies illegality, implies theft, right? Plagiarism is the intentional or accidental sharing of another person or person's ideas as one's own. Whereas piracy is kind of the theft and use of, right? And so, like, to use something like media, I don't have to necessarily possess it to have pirated it, right? It's to access it without whatever the regulations of acquisition are. And especially think about someone, let's go low tech, but still in the technology conversation, someone taking a camera into a movie theater and then filming that movie and then burning their own discs and then selling them on the street or on eBay or something like that, right? You're all kinds of illegal activities happening within that one goal, which is to profit off of someone else's work. And yeah, so that happens. But now a lot of digital piracy, takes place, and I think those of us that are have been around this century and just a little bit more will remember that sort of era of experimentation with music piracy. It was this huge deal. Music industry didn't know how to combat it, didn't know how to kind of take control, and had to kind of relinquish some of that control. And they had to reinvent their methods of distribution. And really all large businesses and corporations have had to do that in the digital age. That's a takeaway. That's a learning lesson. All right. Follow-up question, similar content. What does it mean when a video goes viral? Who's this devil's advocate here? Why is it going viral? All right. So I would suggest viral content works like a virus. And hey, let me not plagiarize. Let me do some source attribution. Our spreadable media authors draw this connection, right? And that's when they're talking about virality. They're recognizing that it typically carries a negative connotation. We talk about like a virus, but let's talk about there's also antibodies. They might make that point as well. And so the potency of the term and its use here is about understanding that these things spread. Wow. Let's remember this book was written a couple of years ago, at least. And we're now in the midst, right? We're officially a year plus into this global pandemic. And we understand the nature of what it means for something to go viral and spread, right? And continuously kind of grow and develop offshoots and other strands, right? And the mechanisms by which we encounter and work with this. But viral content works like a virus in how it spreads through all of the channels in which it possesses the capability of penetrating, right? And so viral Media does that. Viral advertising can be this. It's not guaranteed. And that's why everyone's out there trying to, what's the term, become like a viral star. They want that video that's going to go hit. It used to be that landmark was like a million views. There's a different book, I'll have to locate it, talking about YouTube millionaires, right? And referring to YouTubers that can get millions of views. And there is a kind of reward system that we've developed for that kind of thing. But we understand the nature of that being an end goal, but it's an end goal increasingly because of what that can do for the next stage that we get to when we get there. All right. We worked through a couple more. Let's grab another break, right? Eat a quick taco, take a sip, and then we'll continue on with some excellent questions.